Welcome to Meet the Candidates. I'm Eric Crump with the Homewood-Flossmoor Chronicle. My guest is State Senator Willie Preston from the 16th District. He's running for the 2nd District seat in Congress. So, Senator Preston, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. We want to start with the basics, which is basically why you decided to get into public service, what your path was, and then maybe transition into some of your policy priorities if you're elected to Congress.
Sure. First and foremost, thank you for having me, and thank you for the question. You know, what I found throughout my life, much of my adults, when folks, elected officials were asked this question, they're like, I never wanted to be a politician. You know, everybody just kept begging me to do it. I'm not going to tell you that at all. I wanted to be an elected official. When my earliest memories in life was with my father, sitting on his lap, watching the first Gulf War. I believe it was the first Gulf War, watching CNN and Larry King Live. You oftentimes will see me wearing suspenders. I think it has a bit to do with that. And my father was fascinated with politics. He had no proximity to it. Like most folks, he was a political analyst from the couch. And so I came up watching that, like most people would watch. My daddy would joke, my father would say, you know, I didn't raise you watching Good Times. You watched CNN. And he was trying to instill the values of being a good community steward, being engaged in the political process. And so, you know, kind of went away from that as you're growing up, but I was always still fascinated by it. I got an opportunity when I was in college at Chicago State University to go to the CSU Gala. And I was a political science major, and I was advised to go and find someone in my field of study. And so I found the first politician I could find. I found, ironically, the then chairman of the Black Caucus, former state representative Ken Duncan. And he gave me, he blew me off, told me, you know, meet me in May and give me something I can't deny. Well, it just so happened, that was around December or something. Just so happened I was in student government at Chicago State, and I took a busload of students down to advocate, or for Advocacy Day. It was my first time down in the state capitol. And I saw him. It was a busy place. It was one of those busy times. He was walking past, and I said, hey, you remember me? Of course he didn't remember me. And I said, listen, you know, I'm giving you something you can't deny. I'm a leader. I got all these students here with me. He gave me his number, told me to give him a call over the weekend. I called him, and he allowed me to become an intern for him, and I think the rest is history. I got to my first real seat to see in the state politics and how it worked.
And that led to eventually to your current position, right?
Yeah, I think that was a true enlightening moment for me. But you know, I've been an activist, and I think that is probably what was the real bridge. I was an activist at Chicago State at the time. I perceived that administration to be a corrupt administration, and I, along with other student activists at the time and faculty, we got really engaged in that process, and ultimately led to me being expelled from the university. But it was a true lesson in Chicagoland politics there, because they really did practice a really ruthless politics on a student. But from there, I went on and engaged in activism through Laquan McDonald, and ultimately transitioned into an organizer. I always felt that it was, you know, important for me at some point, and I said this to my fellow activists, to transition from activism to, you know, real established political power, so that we could see the type of changes that we were advocating for. And so I ran for state representative, got my butt kicked, came back, ran for state senate, and we won big.
All right. From that experience, what kind of policy priorities have you developed if you get to Washington?
If I get to Washington, I'm going to focus on many of the things that I've done already, and that is workforce development, focusing on healthcare disparities. One of the things I'm most proud of is building a trade program at an alternative high school in my district, appropriating funding to make sure that we could build some electricians and plumbers, and carpenters. If elected to Congress, I want to do that on a more broad scale, to build a trade school. One of the things that we do know is that there are trillions of dollars of development coming to the Chicagoland area. We also know simultaneously that we have a big gap. Everybody, a lot of those folks are moving on, and they're not going to be in the trades forever. So these are great paying jobs. I have a background in it. I'm a carpenter. And so I want to build those trade schools so that we don't just build buildings and airports or whatever. We actually build the next generation of builders, because everyone's not going to go to college, and that's okay. But we have true infrastructure needs. But in addition to that, we think about the healthcare disparities. I'm going to build a level 2 trauma hospital here in the south suburbs. We recently saw a young African-American woman have her baby in the year 2025 on the side of an expressway. Because of the inaccessibility of healthcare, she traveled to Indiana, just across the border, to try to have her baby. They denied her. And on her way back, she couldn't wait. The baby would not wait, and the baby was born on the side of the expressway. That is something that government can simply change, as well as mental health facilities. I'm building one. Former Mayor Rahm Emanuel closed 12 mental health facilities. We're building one today from appropriated funds that I was able to secure from the state capitol. I think the next congressperson is going to have the ability to be able to go into budgets and build things that are either don't exist or things that can be scaled up. But I think I bring a particular skill set that the others don't. I'm the most bipartisan state lawmaker in the state of Illinois today, and I don't have to be. We have a supermajority in the Senate, the House. We have all the executive positions. But I got elected independently, and one of the first things I did is when I got to the state Senate, I walked across the aisle and I shook every Republican's hand. And they're in a super minority here. Again, do I agree with them? 9 times out of 10, no. But on the one thing we do agree on, I made a bargain with them. I would focus on that one thing we disagreed in, because we're going to fight the other 9 times out of 10. The reason why I think that's particularly important is because, unlike Illinois, this nation, the United States Congress, is split 50-50. That's where the country truly is. And in order for any of us to get anything done, you're going to have that type of skill set. I already have it.
Well, I was wondering if you could delve into that a little bit more, because that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about is Congress is really almost completely paralyzed. You know, even no matter who has the majority, it's a slight majority, as you said, but the executive branch has actually seized more power in recent years and renders Congress weaker. The signs of that are plentiful now, with the administration conducting military operations without consultation, defying subpoenas, not allowing congressional oversight over immigration facilities. You know, there's a long list of basic defiance of Congress's powers. And I know that bipartisanship is a goal, but in a 50-50 Congress with a strong executive, do you have like some strategies for how to make bipartisanship work in a practical way?
Sure. No, I think that's an excellent question, and I think what it speaks to is what I consider to be the largest threat to democracy, and that is this very blatant, quite frankly, very brilliant, and some people are going to kill me for saying this, but this very brilliant attempt by Trump to be able to challenge every single norm that we have. I think what this has gifted us with, however, is an opportunity for us to have some strong considerations about the Supreme Court. We need to evolve the Supreme Court, because what we realize is that it's been stacked. And the whole premise of the Supreme Court and the lifetime appointments provision is to make that institution the ultimate balancer between the executive and the Congress. Well, when you have such a weigh in on this modern day politics of this is a Republican Supreme Court, that in and of itself is an oxymoron that is dangerous, un-American, and unprecedented, and it's one that will not stand up to this moment. And so I'm going to, as a practice, continue what I've been doing here in the state legislature if elected to Congress. I'm going to walk across the aisle. I'm going to work with every individual that I can and truly try to build relationships. I'll invite Republicans to the 2nd Congressional District. I'll welcome an invitation to go to Republican districts. I bet I'll find something that some people might find shocking. Americans with the same healthcare issues, with the same desires to be safe and have peace and stability in the world. And I think that type of skill set and that type of commitment to doing it and building those relationships will bode well for the next congressman in the 2nd Congressional District. That's one. But I think that it's time for us to reevaluate or perhaps expand the Supreme Court, because when I see cases like Louisiana versus Callis that challenges the Voting Rights Act in its most profound ways than it's ever been challenged before, what I am seeing is that institution not only being a balance of power, but simply being a tool to destroy the progress that has been made from my ancestors like Dr. King, Jesse Jackson Sr., and others. And that's something that I think this country cannot afford, because it's a rollback and not a step forward.
So part of reinvigorating Congress's power lies with reforming the Supreme Court.
It is completely tied.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you why, because every president has an opportunity. Even Jimmy Carter, who was a one-term president, each president they profoundly impact the nation. And it's from this one word that I don't want anybody to leave without understanding. It's the precedents to set. See, what I find to be, sadly, what I find to be so sad about our politics right now, on the Democratic side, is that everybody is taking the bait. Trump. It's not Trump. Haven't they realized? It is what the presidency set. I'm not worried about Trump as much as I'm worried about Trumpism. Trumpism can survive far out longer than him. This idea that the executive branch is someone that can punch a finger and say, well, let's go kidnap a president. Can punch a finger and say, this is my military force. Can say, I don't want them to get any food stamps. That program is mine. This is something that will outlive him. He has laid down the foundation, and what unfortunately we see that the Supreme Court in its current form is sadly unprepared to be able to deal with this. And I'll close with this. I know I'm kind of long-winded. When you see the executive branch and the federal government attacking states in the way in which particularly Illinois is being attacked, as a state lawmaker right now that administers federal programs such as SNAP, such as Medicaid, Medicare, we are not designed to take on the federal government. And so the always has been the balancing piece of government between the executive and the legislature has been the Supreme Court. Clearly it's not working. We have to reform it, and it needs to be done in a thoughtful way as the 12 founders did, but it's time for us to evolve it.
Yeah, so systems matter, and if this system is being changed to be more authoritarian, that's what you want to pull back from, right?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. But I don't want to do it. I don't want to go reverse.
Yeah.
I don't want to take away the executive's authority because I'm only looking at Trump and not what would be in the future, because we may get another Obama, we may get another Kennedy, we may get someone better than any of them. The legislature, however, cannot become carte blanche over the executive. And so I think the most thoughtful remedy is to make sure that we curate a Supreme Court that can last for generations to come, as the Supreme Court has lasted up until this point. That's right.
Yeah, okay.
I love that. That's the way that's restoring the balance there.
Okay. I wanted to touch back on, you mentioned workforce development as one of your key focuses.
Sure.
The question we ask everybody who's running for 2nd District is what you think about the South Suburban Airport, which is touted as a job developer and would provide a place for workers who we develop to go to work. So what is your assessment of that project? Long in the making, but has made progress recently. So.
Oh, really? You know, I think any connections and connecting folks to the global economy is something that we should all embrace. That's one. What I have said is that there is political rhetoric, and then there are feasible, immediate, long-term strategic advantages that the Second Congressional has that I think we should look forward to. One of which is we have to build a local economy first, and I think that is why I've called for a level 2 trauma hospital. It does two things. It provides us with access to health care, but it's also an economic jobs engine. And I tell people on the campaign trail, I started my career not as a politician, as a janitor at a safety net hospital in Inglewood, where I was from. St. Bernard Hospital is the largest employer of that in that community, and it was when I was a young person with just starting a family with my wife, and ultimately we obviously had 6 children. But I want us to focus on the immediate things that we can do that will keep us moving forward. That I want to make sure that we put together a trade school so that the little boys in Harvey and the little girl on the south side of Chicago that opts not to go to college, that they have a structure in place where we can turn out a next crop of builders. That's one. Because I've often said it is important for us to continue to build, but it's even more important for us to build. And what do I mean by that? We should not have to export in talent when we have such a young population here. And so I'm not opposed to the airport whatsoever. And I think that there are some things that we need to do that we could actually get done in a short amount of time. I had a town hall earlier today we were talking about the mental health facility that we were building. We were inside of the building that I'm actually building right now for the children. I'm building a new facility, a new gymnasium, a new cafeteria, science labs, more classrooms. This was something that I pledged to do, and we are building it right now within a year and a half, building it. And I think to restore confidence in the public, they're going to have to see some immediate things that actually they can see, feel, touch, benefit from. And so if I'm elected to Congress, I would not oppose an airport whatsoever, but I think our focus should be on some things that people can see, feel, touch, and benefit from pretty quickly.
So you have a little bit different priority, but not at the exclusion of the airport.
Sure, yep, I think that's fair.
That's
I want to add something to that too. This is the last point on that. The truth of the matter is you have to get the governor to sign over the land.
Yeah.
You have to get the mayor of Chicago's input on that. And that has long been the thing that people continue to mislead South suburban voters. I have engaged in my career and in my life in this thing called radical transparency. Telling the truth even when you're not supposed to. And the truth of the matter is no one's telling the voters that. So people keep hearing this airport, but they don't tell them that the hurdles that are real. Nobody wants to say the governor opposes the airport, but the truth of the matter is that airport was proposed over 2 decades ago. And one of the things that people dislike about politics is like, what's taking so long? Why isn't anything happening? And I want the voters to be aware of that too. Now, I'll work with any governor, I'll work with any mayor, but you don't hear them speaking about putting an airport in the south suburbs. And if they need to sign off on that for that to happen. I don't want to mislead people into thinking something's going to happen. Under a Congressman Preston, I'm going to promise you something, I'm going to deliver you that.
I'm glad you mentioned transparency because that's key to good governance, according to a journalist. You've got a second district is long and big and has multiple demographic and economic elements to it, right? How do you deal with that diverse population from rural to suburban to urban, and make sure that all the people in your area are well informed and that you hear from them and their concerns? I mean, that's always a big challenge. But what's your plan? I pride myself on having constituent services. I had a pretty strong showing for my quarterly town hall that I conducted today. One of the things that I promised I would do if elected to Senate, I'm going to continue that if elected to Congress. The way I have the 16th legislative district structured in my current role as a state senator is I pretty much see my district, which is half city,
half suburban. A lot of folks may not know that. I represent everybody from the east side of Chicago going all the way to Palos Hills. So that's Oaklawn, Burbank, Bridgeview, Hickory Hills, Palos Hills, and 9 wards in Chicago, 9 cities and villages in the suburbs. I see the 16th district as a conglomeration of leaders, both elected and non-elected. I'm famous for saying every leader isn't elected and every elected is not a leader. I see the 2nd congressional district the same way. We are blessed and honored to have this broad-based support from Chicago to the suburbs to central Illinois. And where I see us continuing to build as a congressional district is a conglomeration of leaders, both elected and non-elected. I enjoy the support of Alderman Anthony Beal on the south side of Chicago. I enjoy the support of Stephen Hunter in Kankakee. Both of these individuals happen to be the deans of their respective areas, but have drastically different needs in politics. Anthony Beals, Alderman of Chicago City Council, Stephen Hunter, Dean of Kankakee Politics. Now, seemingly those 2 gentlemen don't have a relationship. I think the congressperson of this particular district has a responsibility to be the conduit between these factions. Okay. And that is an important thing to note, that this is not going to be a district that I lead alone. It is going to be something that we build together. You see some folks in this election, they don't have that type of relationships. They don't have that type of support. We're bringing everybody in the room, from our nonprofits, to our small businesses, to our large businesses, to our elected officials, to our faith leaders. And I'm going to establish quarterly town halls at the congressional level, as I've done at the state level. And we're going to make sure that we do what I'm doing at the state level. We're going to move it all around the district. So I'll tell you, the best thing that you can trust on what someone's going to do is what they've done. I've done that already. I launched my campaign in the southernmost portion of this district in Vermilion County. Shout out to Royal Donuts. They were delicious, a delight. And then I moved on up from Vermilion. We had stops in the Kankakee area. And then we went on over to the south suburbs, not too far from here. And ultimately, it culminated on the south side of Chicago, where I'm from. And I think that that's, to me, the way you start is often the way you'll finish. The way you campaign is often how you'll govern. I did that thoughtfully, because I understood that the guy from the south side of Chicago needed to do an extra mile and demonstrate to the people in central Illinois that I'm going to be your congressman as well. And look, if I was just listening to consultants, I would have been at the Pullman Porters. I would have been over in Hyde Park. I would have been where I believe my base is supposed to be. But the base is every single person. The base can be on a farm. I've been on a farm. We have 4,500 farms inside this district. I am very committed to every single person inside of this district, at the very bare minimum, believing that they have a congressman and someone who represents their interests. And the only way that's possible is if I bring those leaders, again, whether it's a rural pastor, and Alderman Anthony Beal has been in Chicago hard-nosed politics in the city council since 1999, in one room, and saying, this is where the nation is, this is where the agenda is set. How does this impact you, her, you, her, and me? And this is what the 2nd Congressional District has its strength from. The diversity of this district comes from its strength, by it being the most American district in America. Big city Chicago, suburban, and rural Illinois, all wrapped in one, baby. We got the best of the best of all worlds.
There you go. All right. I wanted to shift to one last topic that I think could impact all of those people, and especially when you talk about workforce development, that's going to be impacted, and it's artificial intelligence, which is poised to potentially remake our entire economy and society. I wanted to just lay the groundwork with a couple of bits here. There are a few alarmists when it comes to how the trajectory of AI. Eliezer Yudkowsky's book, his newest book that just came out, is titled "If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Dies," which is, he's talking about super intelligent AI.
Can you give me, well, after this, can you tell me his name? I want to read this.
And then there are companies like one that I just saw recently mentioned on a Hard Fork podcast. It's called Mechanize, And their stated mission is to eliminate human labor. They think that AI will just be more efficient. It'll, in relatively short order, will render human labor obsolete. The other aspect of the context here is the vast investment in AI. Right now, I've heard that like 2/3 of our economy is based on AI investment. At the same Hard Fork podcast, they gave this little factoid. The interstate highway system cost $3 billion to develop over 36 years. That's adjusted for inflation. And AI companies are investing $6 billion, double, in 1 year. So if the AI investment is dwarfing the interstate system, which changed our transportation infrastructure dramatically, we have to wonder then, what kind of role are people going to have in that transformation, and how is Congress going to represent us in the face of this steamroller?
Well, I appreciate that question. You know, one of the things that I think is extremely tempting when you run for elective office is that you want an answer for everything when you're asked. I don't have the answers to the question you just asked. What I do have is the integrity to admit that. Because what I do want to speak to, I want people to have confidence in their congressman that he knows what he's talking about. This is all coming on pretty rapidly, and I rely on subject matter experts in areas where I'm not as equipped, that I haven't studied. Again, you want to know what you're talking about at this level. And so what I will say is that there is a couple of challenges that we have as a nation. One, we cannot lose the technology war, because that will be an abandonment of our national security interest. We know that we have other large nations, such as China, that did everything they can to spy on us, to steal our technology, and that they have a different style, different form of government that would allow them to be more efficient, let's say, because they don't have to deal with the hurdles of democracy that we hold near and dear to us. And so I want to make sure that we're able to be competitive. While at the same time, I think that the general belief from most Americans is that we don't want to allow anything that's going to kill us all. So ideally, what I have done just recently in my current role is I'm drafting legislation to make sure that the children in the next generation are mandated to study AI. Because I think that, again, it goes back to the point where I always tell my children, know what you're saying, know what you're talking about. And so the next generation has to be armed with the education to be able to explain to us what they believe we should do. And I also do support banning ChatGPT from schools so that the kids actually are still utilizing their brain and not telling Chat to let us just run freely. That's probably what it was. I saw recently, I read an article where an artificial intelligence system once shut down, got the warning, and started rebooting itself in other places so it wouldn't be shut down. And that was pretty terrifying, I would admit. But I think in terms of AI, the guiding principles must be keep America competitive, because it is vital to our national security interest. Also, make sure that the next generation has the tools and that they're equipped to actually lead it and understand it. Those are my guiding principles at this point. But at this point, I'm still studying the AI, the entire things that they'll impact and how they might impact us. And I'm not comfortable speaking on whatever policy I may or may not take yet at this point, because that would be reckless and premature.
Fair enough. We're all running to catch up, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Are there any other comments or points that you want to make sure our community knows about before we wrap up?
Yeah, look, I think that it is so important for us to know who's funding folks' campaign. I think that we have Commissioner Miller that is being funded by the American Israeli Political Action Committee, AIPAC for short. and it's not even the point that she's being funded by them, but what at this point is that she's being so disciplined and being dishonest about that support. And that calls into question why. And I think that it matters who's funding campaigns. As a sitting elected official, I can assure you that there are special interest groups who 1,000% will write the legislation for elected officials and tell them which way they're gonna vote on these measures. And this is not a game, this is very serious. AIPAC in particular, they have one interest, they only have one interest, and that's a military issue. And that's dangerous because that could send this country back into war, and I'm very concerned about that. And I think every one of your listeners and readers should be asking and investigating before they vote who is behind each candidate, because that is the surest way to determine what type of congressperson you get. I'm not going to be meeting in K Street with people all day long. I'm going to be back here in the 2nd Congressional District meeting with constituents because I'm strong enough as a congressman, if elected, independently, to be able to be their voice and not the voice of lobbyists on K Street.
How do you think we should address the question of funding sources for politicians and how much influence the money has? Do you have ideas for how to address that problem?
It's really simple. In Citizens United, that is something, corporations are not people. That again goes back to where we started in this conversation, which is the Supreme Court. Those type of declarations, really, they undermine regular people. Now, we know that the way the government was structured, it was structured to be lobbied. But the people who designed this nation, in all of their brilliance, they did not envision it being a handful of people with briefcases with checks in them, or now I guess they tap their phones to give you contributions. No, it was supposed to be lobbied by the iron workers and the plumbers and the teachers and the fishermen and and the educators and the artists. It was supposed to be all of these factions of different Americans, not whoever had the power of wealth concentrated in their hands. And that's the dangers of the entire nation. That is the danger of the entire republic. And so, in Citizens United, full stop. And because once we strip away that, I think we will be back to where we were when we were at our best. And that is a battle of ideas.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.